The Roots of Success podcast is for the landscape professional who's looking to up their game. We're not talking lawns or grass here. We're talking about people, process, and profits. The things deep within the business that need focus to scale a successful company. From hiring the right people and managing your team to improving your operations and mastering your finances, we've got a brain trust of experts to help you nurture the roots of a successful business and grow to the next level. This is the Roots of Success.
Welcome to another episode of the Roots of Success podcast. I'm your host, Tommy, and today we have Josh Nguyen, one of the top executive recruiters from McFarland Stanford. Today, Josh and I are going to cover a lot of great information about what recruiting means to you, how recruiting is like an iceberg. Two of my most favorite things that we discussed was significance of onboarding a new candidate and how important it is to your organization, and how important it is to have a very, very warp speed mentality on getting your candidate on board. It's going to be a great episode, so let's get this thing going. It's good to have you, Josh. How are you? So, Josh, we want to know all about you, and then we also want to know about recruiting and what your role is. Tell me about your background. You've been in recruiting before McFarland Stanford. What's that like?
So a little bit about me and my background is that I started out as an intern with Target. So I got a little bit of my corporate experience when I was in college at Texas Tech, which I think you're familiar with for sure.
Let's go.
And I was an HR intern. So my primary responsibilities at that internship was to hire, review resumes, and help with the onboarding. So through that internship with Target, I was able to kind of find value in kind of my education and what I really wanted to do with my career. So I just happened to fall into recruiting after I graduated and started my staffing career then. So I've got about 9 years of recruitment and staffing experience, primarily Fortune 100, Fortune 500, big banks and things of that nature. But I've had the opportunity to support many industries, service industries, construction, warehouse, distribution, insurance, mortgage, banking, even IT.
What's one of those things that you could take back from those Target days or your early days in your career to what it equates to now?
What I found is just being consistent through and through. So not just, being reactive to every situation, but trying to be proactive in my approach in my day to day, and building that consistent process, throughout my career has really, really honed my skills and locked me down into kind of what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Consistency and discipline you got to have, right?
You have to.
Love it. Take me through a day in the life of a recruiter. Like, that's kind of a big word, right? Tell me your role as a recruiter. Like, what is that like, generally speaking, so our audience has an idea what that means?
Well, yeah. So being a part of the recruiting department here at McFarland Stanford is just all about helping our clients through success, because as much revenue as you grow or generate, whatever you're forecasting, you're going to need people behind those desks to make sure those are ongoing, continuous growth, or even planning for potential new opportunities coming in. So recruiting in this world, in this realm within landscaping, it's just being diligent with the recruiting process. No matter what company you're part of, landscaping, construction, banks, housing, whatever industry that you're a part of, you're always following the same recruitment cycle. You may teeter or tailor your approach a little bit differently just based off your audience, but you're always following the same recruitment process: sourcing, screening, interviews, resumes, final interviews, final steps, onboarding, and the start date. Without fail, every industry follows the same recruitment cycle through and through. Whether they do it over virtually, to the phone, however they wanted to adapt, they're still following that same cycle. So in that world, it's my job to follow the clients and the candidates through each cycle of the recruitment process. So each stage, I'm always there to help support, help coordinate, determine resumes, review resumes, give insight to the clients and to the candidates on how to partner together to be successful to hopefully fill the position and help someone find their dream job as well.
Good point there. Okay, one of the things I really want to dive into was the time and the pace of getting back to these candidates. I've seen some correspondence go across my laptop over the course of the last few years. And I can see your face when clients don't get back to you quickly because you have a hot candidate, right? Mm-hmm. Tell us the significance of what that means in your line of work.
Significance of time. I want to circle back just a tad bit, because whenever we talk about time, and if anybody partners with a recruiter or with a recruiting division, and if a manager or a hiring manager or a leader feels like they're being pressed, it's not necessarily because we want to press you as the hiring manager or the leader. It's more or less we have an understanding, being in the recruitment world 24/7 as our sole position, that we understand timelines of candidates and just the average timelines of when candidates accept positions. So speed and quality has to go hand in hand with each other. I do see when it comes to hiring managers, sometimes they'll stick to the quality route because, yes, everybody wants that A+ candidate who meets all the needs. And he's going to be a great culture fit. He's going to be 5 minutes away from the office, so you know they're not going to be late, right? Those things come up. A lot of those items are very important. Or you have timing to where they're going to want to take their time to find that quality candidate, but not necessarily understanding what that means. There's always a number assigned or attached to all these processes. So, but having them hand in hand together is not impossible. It takes a little bit of diligence and to lock down your process as far as interviews, who's going to be a part of it, as well as the expectations throughout the entire process with these candidates and with these clients and these companies. But quality and speed can for sure go hand in hand with each other 100%.
Yeah. So what's the expected time? So when you present a client, the candidate, what's the expectation to get back?
The expectation is 48 to 72 hours when you should at least show interest within that candidate, because that candidate is not just looking at your company. They may have 5 things in the works, 10 things in the works, 15 in the works. They use a platform that has easy apply. LinkedIn has that option. Indeed has that option. So you can never assume that these candidates are just going to speak to one company. So 48 to 72 hours is a good stance, because then you can plan out the week or the following week to set up an interview to do a deep dive on their experience.
Yeah.
But I can put it to you in this, I'll put it to with the dates. So what's one of the funnest things you like to hear from a hiring manager or a company when you say, hey, when are you looking to fill this position? They always will say yesterday, because they need that help, especially in our world where springtime is coming. They need to prep and plan for that season. But if they say yesterday, I always use the example. Okay, how long is your interview process? Standard is going to be around 2 to 3. One interview is equal to 1 week, depending on your schedule of the hiring manager or the team or the candidate. So you already have a lot of variables to attack and to determine and process before you even get to the first interview. So if you're fortunate enough to find a candidate week 1, you got to tack on 2 to 3 weeks on there. So we're already looking at a 2 to 3 week process without even getting to the offer stage. And again, depending on schedules, that could bleed into 4 weeks. And then you have onboarding, and then your standard candidate will put in a 2-week notice if at their current employer. And if you're not fortunate enough to have that candidate the first week, however long it takes, we keep the timeline still does not change necessarily. I mean, you have those opportunities where the candidate has nothing going on, the salary range is ideal, the location is ideal, and the company's ideal, and it's a match made in heaven, right? They're going to start the next week. It's great. Everyone's happy. But if we're looking to follow the law of averages when it comes to candidates and companies and the hiring speed on average with the data that's out there, you're looking about a permanent position, full benefits, things of that nature, looking about 5 to 6 weeks turnover from resume review to the offer stage and to the start stage.
Good. Yeah. Once again, time is of the essence, right? Everyone needs somebody yesterday by the time they get a hold of you guys. And if that's the case, you got to make time for these candidates, because quite frankly, they're interviewing you, right? And so if you're slow to get a lot of things, that's a turnoff.
Well, it's all about first impressions. If somebody's got to take the time to apply or to reach out to you or start the recruiting process, all ears are open. So what companies need to understand is that if they're interested in that candidate based off their paper, on paper and on their resume, time is of the essence to capture that individual in their mindset.
Yeah, good one. Thank you. Let's talk about counter offers.
Oh, yeah.
What to do in that situation.
Counter offers. So that one, when you hear counter offers, it's a little bit scary, right? Because you put in all this work. We already talked about 5 or 6 weeks. Counter offers will typically come up, towards the final interview or when the offer is out to a candidate. And then, I hate it and everybody hates it, but when you think you've got that right candidate, here's an offer ready for you to sign, start on Monday. And then out of left field, it comes, hey, I actually have a counter offer from my current employer and I'm seriously considering it. That does, you put a lot of time into it. It makes your stomach sink a little bit because you're like, wow,
for sure.
I may be at risk of losing this candidate. But you don't need to overthink it. Counter offers is a simple conversation of, why did we have this conversation in the first place? Why did you start this process with us as a company if you weren't ready to potentially part ways with your current employer? Having that realistic conversation about what expectations were set in the beginning, reasons why they were potentially looking for a new opportunity, is really what's going to hit home towards the end. If you regurgitate that information back to the candidate of what they've told you as the hiring manager, you're going to have more of a common ground place to work with. Because the mistake that I do see in industries across the board is that when they see counter, they have a reactive emotion behind it to thinking, is it money? Is it distance? Are they giving you a larger title? It may not necessarily be that. For the candidate, it's just a new opportunity that they need to consider. But to be reminded of why you were parting ways to begin with is really going to mean more than you realize to these candidates.
Yes. You have a lot of candidates that inevitably decline the offer and just stay because of increased pay or whatever. Does that happen often? Or
I would say it does not happen often, but it happens enough to recognize it. Okay. It happens enough to be recognized because, again, you put in this much time as a hiring manager and as an owner of a company. You put all this time into this individual that you thought was going to work out. But yes, in fact, they do stay because that candidate, it's now go time, right? To sign the offer or to stay at the current company. And if nothing was going on culturally, at that company, they may decide to stay because it's what they know, especially as long as they've been there. It varies. If they've been there 1 year, the risk of them staying at that company may be slim. But if someone's put 10 years of work, sweat into that company, they may consider staying if their needs are met.
The relationship there is on thin ice, right? Between their current employer and themselves a little bit, because they've already stuck their leg out there to sort of see if it's greener on the other side, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. One of my most favorite things that I coach to all the time is this word called job descriptions.
Oh yeah.
And most landscape companies hire somebody and they just rock and roll with it with no job description. Landscape companies are pretty well known for that. And they're almost the opposite, where they try to figure out job descriptions after they've been long employed. So how important is a job description, or one step further, their job defined role? How important is that to be upfront and figure it out as an organization to be ready to hire these people?
Very. I would say very. So I would put it into a way how I could relate to a hiring manager or a company. A company's first impression of a candidate is typically going to be their resume. Or if you're working with a recruiter, our opinions and summary of that candidate's background based off our screen or interview. The candidate's first impression is going to be the job description. They can talk to a recruiter all day. They can talk to an owner all day, a company all day. But if they don't have a detailed outline of potentially their responsibilities, they're going to think that they're going to be just all over the place. There's no structure. There's no format to potentially what's going to be happening, if they accept a position, if they're fortunate to. But it's that first impression that's really going to set the tone with a candidate. So to be descriptive is very, very important, especially within landscaping. We see this quite often to where there's going to be a job description, and depending on the size of your company, it could be 1 million to 100 million. But if you have a job description of 10 bullet points for maintenance account management, handling maintenance accounts, potentially helping with operations, acting as lead production manager when other managers are out, things of that nature. But what if they're now going to have responsibilities on the design side, on the install side? You need to accurately put that information. That is a possibility for that candidate so they understand and can expect their day-to-day. But also, this is important for an interview as well. If you have a bare job description, the candidate is not going to know how to relate their experience in the past to what you actually need. Okay. So if the job description is bare, they're going to come in and just have random ideas about how to sell themselves. Their elevator pitch might turn into a escalator pitch where it's just a really slow ramp up. So having a detailed job description is very, very key.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. It's almost like your resume as a company.
Yes.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
if that's not figured out in advance,
Mhm.
oh boy, as a candidate, I might not be attracted to you guys to go work for you, right? That's where you guys have to come in and sort of kind of create a job description, right? Which is okay at times, but I would think that they need to be prepared for it. And so your recommendation is all landscape companies have job descriptions, define roles figured out for every single position in your company. And when that position becomes available, you're locked and loaded, ready to go.
Exactly. And it helps whoever is hunting for potential candidates, reviewing resumes, whoever you have in your circle to bring on candidates have to be in the know as well, because then those expectations are going to be on the same page to everybody else. But yeah.
Love it. Love it. Moving to another topic. You mentioned it to me a few days ago. We were talking about this decision maker thing.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Decision maker. It's hiring manager. It's any leader potentially that has a voice in the company that can have an impact on if this candidate will be chosen or not to move forward into the next step or to bring onto the team. So, Tommy, I'm sure you see this a lot, especially with a lot of your clients and what you coach to. But a lot of companies, a lot of leaders like to put a lot on their shoulders and carry it. You know, we talk about pass the monkey quite often or share the ulcer. So recruitment and interviewing should be no different. If you have a leader who could potentially be out of the office on PTO, we were talking about the recruiting cycle as far as the timeline goes. Let's say you're out and you're the sole decision maker. That 5 to 6 weeks now may turn into 2 to 3 months, depending on how long you're going to be out. So if you have another decision maker in the process, it could be your right-hand man, it could be your VP of operations, it could be your branch manager, or even your operation leader. Having them involved in the recruitment cycle, and if you're out or if you don't have time, you're out in the field, especially depending on the season, checking up on your clients and the properties, you're going to want that extra decision maker to help foster the relationship and continue the recruitment cycle on your behalf. And if it's somebody that you trust, you know that once that interview concludes, they're going to give you detailed information about that candidate regardless and their gut feeling on if they'd like to move forward with that individual. Plus, it gives team buy-in. If you have a leader who has not been a part of this process and say, hey, we'd love for you to join this, they're going to feel like their voice is being heard, and it just makes everybody feel more excited about the process.
Yeah. Well, when I think about that, I think of accountability. So you're holding the owner of the landscape company accountable to get that new account manager that we all desperately need. And if you know how busy the owner is of a landscape company, right?
Oh yeah.
There's so many fires to be put out and there's things to be sold, operations, you name it, across the board, payroll, all that. If you can find a right-hand person or a couple of people on your staff to really help the process be smooth, accountability is the one that hits home for me.
No, you hit the nail on the head there.
Awesome. Here's another question mark for you. We're going through all these topics. These are great things. What's this transferable and relatable skills? What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that, from a company and hiring manager, anybody who's reviewing a resume, that topic is necessary for them. So obviously, when I'm looking to hire an account manager, I want to see certain things, tangible, intangible items. I want to see a minimum of 5 years experience with account management experience, specifically that title within landscaping. However, if we do that, we really limit ourselves to a small portion of the market, of the candidate pool. So how we open that up, especially if you're in a rural area, not as highly populated as a metroplex, but looking at transferable skills. Let's say they are in landscaping. They've done it for 10 years, but they don't have the title of account manager. But the synonym of that is client-facing experience. Have you ever taking care of a client who needed help with their property, or were you part of the bidding process, the takeoff process? Similar titles that have those responsibilities could be estimators, who's part of it, project management, even though the operation production leaders could be a part of that as well. So with those client-facing responsibilities, they need to be trained up just a little bit more to get to that account management title. But those transferable skills, to be neglected on paper, would do you a disservice. It really would. So if you look for those relatable synonyms of the position you're looking for, your candidate market now turns from 50 to 100, 100 to 200, because every client or every company will call their salespeople, their account management people, their project install design build team. They'll call it something different depending on how they want to operate their company. So just to find those synonyms on paper is really going to open up the candidate market for you.
Yeah, makes sense. Are you seeing, as of now, non-landscape related candidates getting some interviews and possibly hiring? Like, so companies are reaching out. They're this sort of broader net. You know, when I think of other service industries,
Yeah.
they're relatable to landscape at the end of the day, right? So tell me more about that and how that's working for the clients that are out there.
Very much so. So we have had quite a bit of success, and that kind of falls under the transferable skills, because within construction, pest, roofing, things of that nature, what's very common of that to landscaping? Running crews, understanding bids, takeoffs, project completions from beginning to end, materials handling, purchasing as well. So all of those industries follow a very similar structure as to landscaping. So if we have a company who is confident that they can teach landscaping, with the mowers and the schedules and things of that nature, tying a other relatable service industry to the landscape industry is quite valuable, especially depending on the location or even the budget constraints that you may have when hiring for these team members, right? Each industry, depending on their specialty, it could range in different salaries as well. So looking outside of landscaping would be a lot faster turnaround if you have the ability to train on landscaping. So yes, very valuable to look at other industries because of their structure, because of how similar they are with accounts payable, accounts receivable, even on the financial side. They're facing similar challenges and successes just like within landscaping.
Yeah, that is, we're in a tough market right now where a lot of the good people are all hired. And so there's so many relatable skills outside the landscape that complement well to the landscape industry. One of the most important things is a client-facing role. God, I think everybody should, be a server or work in retail, right?
Yes, especially, Let's say, for example, look, we'll go back to Texas Tech, Tommy. Ruby Tequilas, right? I mean, you've been there plenty. I'm sure we all have. But
is that where you work?
If those servers, after they graduate, I guarantee that they're doing well in a client-facing role. Because in hospitality, retail, you're going to deal with very easy customers. Or you're going to have the opposite side of that. You're going to have to handle difficult customers and think on your feet. And if you don't provide a solution, that's going to be known in that environment. So to be able to think on your feet and respond the way you respond to help solve a customer's problems or situation, those are skills very, very much so that relates to the industry that we're in.
Yeah. I could sit here for another couple of hours and talk about Texas Tech memories of working. I had every job known to man in the city of Lubbock, but it taught me a lot of good client-facing skills that are great today. Okay, my favorite discussion, my favorite topic. I coach to this all the time. So you got a candidate, right? And let's say they're hired. We wrote down this term called significant onboarding. I talk to so many clients about onboarding and how it should be the most amazing experience for anyone new on your team. How do you help clients onboard new candidates to their team?
So it just depends on the size of your company, but with onboarding, it sets the tone. Whenever they sign on the dotted line and sign an offer, it's not over. It's not over till they start. It's not over.
Starting.
Exactly. Yeah. So it sets the tone thinking, okay, I've just spent maybe potentially 5 to 6 weeks interviewing. Everybody loves me. And then the onboarding starts. You know what the worst case scenario is? If there's no communication. After you've signed and you said you're going to be here in like 2 to 3 weeks, no communication, it's going to get the candidate to start to worry. So hiring managers and companies need to really pay attention to that as soon as they sign on the dotted line, reach out to them. Potentially, if you have a team event, bring them on board. Start filling out the I-9 paperwork, the background checks. Being in constant communication makes it more real for a candidate, and it gets their buy-in and their dedication to the company, thinking, wow, this onboarding process was phenomenal because the owner reached out to me, the HR reached out to me to make sure I was okay, had everything I needed for my day one. It sets the tone for their entire career there at your company. So onboarding is very vital as soon as the offer letter is signed. So how I coach that with my clients, at least within landscaping, is that at least at a bare minimum, as soon as they get the offer letter back, signed and ready to go, somebody from the company reaching out to that candidate to make sure that if you have any questions, please reach out to me. They're going to start to know the team throughout the onboarding stage as well. So very important.
That's great. Yesterday or last night was the start of the NFL draft.
Right.
And I did not watch it, but I saw bits and pieces of it on social media. Do you understand, like, everyone that gets drafted last night, today, through the weekend, what their onboarding process is with that NFL team? Oh, are you kidding me? They've got the swag. They've got the party. They have the come visit us. Now, we all don't have an airplane to fly and pick up your people, but think about everything that's lined up and what it means. The ownership's there. The team is there. Probably everyone from the equipment manager is there to greet and welcome. And, and for that prospect that got drafted, that's where everything starts right then. They go to, what's the one thing they say? We're going to work right now. I mean, if you put that in perspective of your landscape company, it's, I want to come work for you.
Yeah. No. Take away the private planes and everything else to get their version of onboarding started. They're planning out the coordination of when they need to be on the practice field, right? They're starting to plan out the season, the lineup, and everything of that nature. It doesn't need to be too far removed how it relates to us in landscaping or in any industry that utilizes recruiting or has a recruiting division. Once they sign the contract, after a draft, or when they sign an offer letter, they're an employee of yours after they sign the offer letter. So how we make them feel like they're part of the team is going to be very important. And again, it sets the tone. What if the example was in that draft? They signed the contract, no call from the head coach, no call from the owner of the company. They're going to think, am I actually playing for the Cowboys right now? Is that really happening? I haven't heard anything for like a month. So it sets the tone to your future employer, 100%.
No, that's a great example. I was just thinking about that today. I was like, man, that's just a good analogy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Josh, man, we could sit here and talk about football and tech and all that. Anything that we did not cover that our audience would love to know, something in your back pocket that you would love to share with everybody that says this would be extremely helpful for your business?
I would say consistently having detailed feedback on every candidate that you speak with. Not just for you as an owner. Let's say you are an owner and you want to head up the recruiting process for the company, bring everybody in. That's great. But with everybody involved in the process, let's say that hiring manager has an interview, did not go as well, or is just not an ideal candidate for the time. There has to be reasons why, or the other people in the process may continue to make the same potentially mistake or opportunities again that you don't want. So having detailed feedback spread out across your team is very vital to making sure there's consistency when you're having the interview process. That way, if one candidate doesn't work out, we know the reasons why. Everybody's in the know. We're going to be very selective, when we start to review resumes and when we start to ask our questions. It really helps us adapt and adjust our recruiting process when we have somebody in play. So after the first interview, if there's something that you loved about that candidate, share that with the team. So for future hires, we now know to look for those types of skill sets in other individuals. So not only does detailed feedback help you in the now, it helps you in the future when you're going to be recruiting and building up your teams again. So as long as everybody's on the same page, and that could be potentially documented somewhere, either through email, through your internal CRM, your ATS, your applicant tracking system, things of that nature. However you keep track of your recruiting process, having those notes for everybody to see is going to be very, very vital whenever you bring those team members on. And I know I'm saying the word vital a lot, but when it comes to recruiting and you bring in a person to your team, you're going to want to take care of that process.
Yeah, well, a lot of my clients, they're tired of hearing of it, but I always say people are your number one asset in your organization. It's not the equipment. It's not the facility. It's not the software. You have to have people to run all of that. And so get good at recruiting, right? Get good at it is what I'd recommend. Get really good at it. Be efficient. That law of attraction will be great for your business to get good candidates. Josh, it's been a pleasure. It's been an awesome time. I think we're going to have you again for sure. I could go on and on and on. So the fact that we're both tech grads is awesome. Appreciate you coming on board and giving us some key nuggets here.
Anytime.
Hey, Josh. So how do we get in touch with you? Whether you're a client that needs candidates or if you're a candidate that wants to look for a new job, how do they get in touch with you?
Oh, by all means, please visit me directly. You can find me on my LinkedIn profile as well. But reaching out to me, I can help identify your needs, whether you're a candidate or a company, or simply just going to our company website. We have a email link there on the company website, mcfarlandstanford.com. That is very generic, info@mcfarlandstanford.com, and that will direct you to one of us on the recruiting team to help with your inquiry.
Awesome stuff. Thank you. Thank you for everything, Josh. Great to hear your stories. We'll see you soon.
Ready to take the next step? Download our free profitability scorecard to quickly create your own baseline financial assessment and uncover the fastest ways to improve your business. Just go to mcfarlandstanford.com/scorecard to get yours today. To learn more about McFarland Stanford, our best-in-class peer groups, and other services, go to our website at mcfarlandstanford.com, and don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time on The Roots of Success.